May I now present a cultured, sophisticated man about town. If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits?
Sound good?
Sound good, I think.
Okay.
First of all, thank you very much for doing this. And
Do I get anything?
afterwards, it's a surprise.
I never get anything.
When did you first realize you were funny, and do you think that being funny is something that you are born with, or you
I don't
can
know.
acquire?
It's a big accident.
I have one question, Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein. Why, you mother-grabbing bastard!
I think I knew when I was about 3 or 4 months old, because people would peer down at my crib and laugh. They'd look at me and they'd say, "This kid is funny." I mean, I knew it. I knew it then, and it's never stopped.
Well, clearly. And how much do you feel that the sensibility that comes with maybe being Jewish and working in the Borscht Belt and doing some of those things has impacted your comedic personality?
You know, I don't know. The street corner comics, more important than the Borscht Belt, because the Borscht Belt was the Catskills, the resorts were jokes. Let me explain the difference. They were. I met a girl last night, ladies and gentlemen. This girl was thin. I'm talking about a girl who was so skinny. I took her to a restaurant. The maitre d' said, "Check your umbrella." That's how skinny this girl was, and it would just be one dopey joke like that after another. But on the street corners in Brooklyn, we didn't tell jokes to each other. Everything was, we made observations. You know, we'd say something like, "Here comes Saul. Saul, you need any sugar? We got some sugar for you." And because we knew Saul had a lateral emission. And so it was like, I can't explain, life chemistry, life comics. More on the street corners of Brooklyn and New York than there was on prepared stuff with a light and with a microphone, you know?
And coming out of the Borscht Belt after the street and all of that, how did you first connect or cross paths with, I guess, with Sid Caesar? You know, just how did that connection first happen?
There was a guy called Don Appel. Don Appel was a legitimate actor. And he wrote a play called This Too Shall Pass about racial prejudice. It was beautiful. And he was also in a play when we first met him with Canada Lee. There was me and this guy, Joe Gavanter, and we would hang around Mr. Shanus's grocery store. It was closed at night. And we'd wait for Don, because it was right next to 365 where Don lived. And we'd say, "Don, tell us about the show tonight." And we were up until like 12 at night or 1 in the morning. And he would talk show business to us. And finally, I used to do my drumming and show him my stuff and almost every night. And he sent me to Hurleyville, to the Butler Lodge. And Sid Caesar was at the Avon Lodge. And we met like in Liberty, New York, at jam sessions, because he played tenor sax and he was very good. And I played drums, but we would just batter jokes back and forth. So we really liked each other. Time passed, and suddenly, you know, I see him in a thing called Tars and Spars. It was like a little movie that the Coast Guard makes, starring Alfred Drake and Janet Blair. And Sid Caesar was the comedy relief, and he was doing stand-up comedy, which was very funny. I asked Don Appel, who was, you know, was his social director at one point, I'd like to see him again. Where is he? And Don said, "I'll take you to the Copacabana." He was appearing at the Copacabana. And he was very funny, and I went backstage. And he said, "Mel, I remember you from, you know, from Liberty, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I was in the Army, now I'm out of the Army, you know." And Sid Caesar said, "This guy Max Liebman has this idea of a review called the Admiral Broadway Review." He said, "I need some jokes." I said, "Fine." He said, "I'll give you 40 a week." I said, "Great." So he gave me $40 a week. And we went, I wrote the Admiral Broadway Review for him. Pat Weaver saw it, and he was a big executive at NBC, a bit of a genius. And he created the show of shows. And he went to Max Liebman with the idea. Sid was Sid and Imogene were instant hits. And then I demanded to be a real writer so I think later on in that season, I was additional dialogue by Mel Brooks, really. And I got something like $85 a week or something.
This writer's room has become sort of the thing of legend, as you know, and rightfully so. And I just wonder if you could almost take us for a moment and, where it was, who was in there, and what was an average day there like?
It started with Mel Tolkin, Tolkin, who was the head writer, rather brilliant guy who really understood human comedy. And Lucille Callan, who wrote all the domestic sketches that featured Imogen Coca. And I was like the third hand on it, helping out with Sid's monologues and the German professor, the airport interviews and stuff. I'd write that stuff. And then little by little, I would be helping to write the foreign movies. We did Double Talk foreign movies. And then it started to spread out. We got Tony Webster, who was a great writer. And then we got people like Joe Stein, who wrote Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway. And then we got Neil Simon, who wrote 37 of the greatest comedies ever on Broadway. And we got Larry Gelbart, who wrote MASH and On the Way to the Forum. And we got our typist, our little typist, this redheaded typist was Mike Stewart, who wrote Dolly and Mame and Bye Bye Birdie. I mean, it was like an all-star writing staff. We would compete with each other, and when someone really came up with it, and it was really funny, we loved it, because it meant the show would be a success. Right. I think it's like a baseball team. You're jealous of another guy getting a hit, but then you realize, gee, if we win the game, we'll get the ring, we'll get a raise, Right. So it was the same dynamic.
You had a few years there where you weren't sure if comedy was gonna work. Even after the release of the first 2,000-Year-Old Man recording, even after your first films in Hollywood, even after Get Smart goes on TV, it was still a bit of a struggle. It was.
Not after Get Smart went on TV. Before, I went from a couple of $1,000s a week at the end of '59, '60, the show of shows, to unemployment insurance. I collected it for practically a year and couldn't find a job. But little by little, it worked out. And as Get Smart, I met Anne Bancroft, and she supported me. We would go to cheap places because she had to pay. I had no money. And we would go to like Chinese restaurants. But she was very kind because she would take the money, fold it up, put it under the table. So I would have it as the man to pay the check. And one time, I don't know, I must have had too much beer or something. I was a little drunk. And usually it was about $18 at the most, never even $20. But one time it was about $20, and I left a $5 tip, and she slapped me. She said, "Are you crazy? That's my money. What are you leaving? $2 is enough for it." Oh, I'll never forget it. And anyway, I was glad to finally get enough work to pay her back.
And the winner is Mel Brooks for the producer. I want to thank the Academy of Arts, Sciences, and Money for this wonderful award.
Now, how did the break into the movies happen? Because with the producers, I believe that's your first screenplay, and I mean, for somebody who had written 20 screenplays, a thing that was originally titled Springtime for Hitler would have been a tough sell, but for a guy who's coming with his first project, did you struggle to get it made?
Struggle is the nicest word you can say, It was just unmakeable. Universal was the closest. We went to Universal Pictures. The head of Universal at that time said, I think this could be done. You have to make one small change. Take Hitler out and put in Mussolini. Everybody likes Mussolini. No, I said, but you don't get it. It's supposed to be a flop, So anyway, we finally got Joseph E. Levine of AFCO Embassy Pictures, and he put up half the money, and Sidney Glazer got the other half of the money, and it worked.
Is there a subject that is not something that you would touch Or like, you know, I would think if there's one, it would have been Hitler, but I don't know. Is there
No. The only thing I won't touch is really I haven't done, and I applaud Benigni for doing it, would be the Holocaust. That's a line. I've done the Inquisition, you know. The Inquisition. I've done some things that were in incredibly bad taste, but I think it's, you know, I would never cross that line. I would never do concentration.
He rode a blazing saddle, he wore a shining star. His job to offer battle to bad men near and far.
And you mentioned that you've done things people have said that they use the word bad taste, but you've always made a point I thought was very interesting where you say, I want the laugh, but I want it to be a smart joke, or at least a joke that tells the audience I'm aware of the human condition. It's not just a cheap laugh, or you know, which what bad taste might imply.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bad taste in Blazing Saddles, but the engine that runs it is racial prejudice. The use of the N-word is not just willy-nilly. It's because those, rednecks, those provincials, really hate this black man, and it's very important that he win them over. And that's the arc. That's the beautiful arc of the film. And so I'm proud of Blazing Saddles because it's more than just a comedy of breaking wind across the prairie.
It's on you. I'm working for Mel Brooks. Not in the face.
With regard to Blazing Saddles, the Hays Code had sort of been fading out around that time, but I think you guys put the nails in the coffin with that.
Yeah.
Was it a struggle, though, even internally with your own studio, to get them to say, we're willing to do this with punching horses and old women and farting?
The guy who ran, I won't mention him, but there was a guy who ran Warner Brothers at the time. He dragged me into it was a first rough cut screening, and he dragged me into the manager's office. He really, literally grabbed me by the collar and threw me down. John Calley, who was running the film division of the studio, came to help me, but this guy was running the whole Warner Brothers, and he said, no farting. I said, I had a legal, I said, it's out. He said, no, you can't punch a horse. I said, it's out. You can't punch an old lady. I said, it's out. He said, you can't say the N-word. N-word, never, trouble, then out. And then he left, and I crumpled everything up. I threw it in the waste paper basket. And Callie said, good filing. You know?
Ow! Oh, ow! Have you ever seen such cruelty?
Whether the studio wanted it or not, that's the film. That I had final cut from the producers right on, and I knew that legally I could do whatever I wanted.
What do you hope that people will take away from your films or remember it long after we're all gone? What's the legacy you'd like to leave?
The legacy I'd like to leave, very simply, two words: sheer enjoyment. If they enjoy the show, if they miss some of the sub-significance or some of the principles that I want to evoke or say about human behavior and human beings, it's okay. My main job is to make people laugh. Of course, there are ulterior motives. You get on a soapbox with Hitler, he's going to win. He's a great orator. But if you can ridicule him, if you can ridicule Hitler, if you can bring him down with laughter, then you're gonna win that struggle, and that's what I've done.